Oh yeah, yeah. That's always important. Welcome to Make Break. I have with me Kentucky. Real name Jordan. Actually, just Jordan. No last name. Thank you so much for joining me today, and it's a pleasure to speak with you again because we've spoken before, not on a podcast, but like
Yeah,
through
it's a
what
pleasure to
I
be
do.
here. Thank you for asking me. I've been looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, that's very rare for me to hear, so thank you. It's a very nice compliment. Um, I have a first question, which is very branded. It is, what is the one thing that you are trying to make that, what is the one thing that Kentucky is trying to make that if you do make it, it'll break down every other barrier?
Hmm. Starting with the small one, eh? Uh,
Should see my small
yeah,
talk at a
yeah.
convenience store. Good God.
We're in the same boat. Game recognized game. I don't do the small talk either. Um, you know,
No.
if I were to make one thing that would break everything else down, uh, I don't think it works that way. Just, I really don't, because if you have a success at something, whatever it is, like a relationship or a song, or you pay the bills, especially if you're a creative person for a living like I am, uh, you want the relationship to keep going. You don't want it to stay the same. You want it to be better.
Right.
You want to see where else you can get with it. If you write an amazing song that connects, that's great while it lasts. And then you want to write another one that connects. And if you pay the bills a month, a year, or a decade, you want to keep continuing to do that. And so I don't think, yeah, I really thought about it there. I don't think there's anything I could make that would break down everything else for me. But like, I want to be able to express myself freely and and not have to do anything other than writing. Mm.
That's beautiful. That's the dream, right?
Yeah, I've lived the dream and I've not lived it. And living it is better than not living it.
Yeah, I think I've heard the statement of like life is a good life is just living the types of days that are good as much as possible and doing everything you can to maximize that occurrence. It's a very clinical, cold way of looking at it, but like kind of
Yeah, I
perfect in a
look at
way.
it in a kind of a similar way. I think just from a different frame of reference, there's this old folk story. Uh, it may have originated with Tolstoy, but it's called The Three Questions. And I think looking at every day in the terms of have you ever heard of them? Okay.
The
So
three
it's this
questions.
story.
No, I haven't. Loving that you've gone to Tolstoy though. We're a few
Good.
minutes in and I'm loving
Uh,
it. Yes,
it
hell
is
yeah.
the three questions are uh, what is the right thing to do? When is the right time to do it? And who is the most important person? And I think if you live that way, you say, well, the most important thing to do is to help. The time to do things is always right now. And the most important person is the person in front of me. And I've found that to be a very effective spiritual advice for how to live. And it's similar to what you said, but I actually don't find it cold and clinical, what you said or what I said. I find it really practical.
Yeah, that really is. But it's also like I love how deliciously I feel like there's something that I heard Sam Altman talk on a podcast recently, and I know that that's a name that we're not huge fans of as creative right now. That said, I survey as much knowledge as I can, and he said something really interesting about knowledge, which is that there's an aspect of it that we don't appreciate, but is something that we are always striving for, whether we know it or not, and it's that when knowledge is compressed, And what I like about, and he had a really tough time explaining it, but like when you're able to compress the knowledge in such a way that it's like this coiled spring that it's like this flat when it comes to you as a human, but then once you receive it, it expand. It's like a zip file, all of us in your mind. Because what you just said to me was three questions, but I understand that as having way larger implications and configurations and understanding of that. It's like having a pack of cards, and you don't realize how powerfully complex it is because you look at it at first and it's just kind of like, play with a pack of cards and whatever. But there are more configurations of the order of those cards than there are atoms in the universe, which is a very silly sounding fact, but actually
Yeah, I
stunningly
think it's
very much true.
permutations and combinations always interested me from when you hear about them in math class in junior high. Just thinking of the amount of possibilities just based on the number of things there are. And all of the nerds in our society who are currently the most popular podcast guests, like these people who write about game theory and gambling and how life is essentially a series of luck, so you have to try to minimize your risk. I'm not saying I don't agree with all of those things. That's all information. It's obviously relatively correct. Uh, but it's
Hmm.
much more interesting to me to think about what could happen than about trying to figure out what is happening. Because by the time you figure out what is happening, the moment is already a new moment. For example, pick an issue in the New York Times
Mm.
today. Aha, now I understand. Well, the moment's already passed on. You're reading about something that happened over the last 3 years that the reporter was covering, or you're reading about something that happened yesterday and you're either agreeing with it, disagreeing with it, or complaining about it right now, but it's already over. And I think it's the permutations and the combinations, like you're saying in the deck of cards. It's more interesting to think, what could I do? Or what could come true? And sort of live in a bit more imagination than our current state of science-ness?
That's really interesting in that. So what if there's just a combination? It's an interesting fact, but what's more interesting to us as humans in our day-to-day life is a framework through which you're trying to get to a specific type or set of combinations. Hence, games like gin rummy or games like poker or what have any game that you have, like it's because of the relationship that you impose on that. That's what's more interesting, and that's what those three questions that you presented do, is that framework. And that's what's interesting to me, is that like that compression of life lesson or perspective or values or something like that is so interesting, because I think we all want, like, when we talk about the secret to life, it's such a funny thing that we don't even realize that we've done this thing where it's like we've boiled it down to such a very
Yeah.
specific little
Yeah.
thing that it possibly could be. It's like the secret to life. What if the secret to life was like a specific arrangement of geometry? Or what if it's a particular type of period of time at a particular like we always think it's like this. The secret to life is like a koan or a quote or a passage or an understanding or a tome or a text. That way of imposing our way of looking at it is like it's very specific, and so we're losing out on like the possibilities, which is what you're talking about, which is the possibilities.
Yeah, I think it's
That's what's
because
really
it's
interesting.
a form of talking about hope. Because if you don't have hope, you have suicide, or you have cults, or things like that, like darkness. And not that I'm not talking about like horror movies. I'm talking about like real darkness where people kill themselves. It's because for a moment or too many
Yeah.
moments they've lost hope, which is the potential, like from the deck of cards. It's something good might happen, or something, even if it doesn't happen, it's that it might happen. And if you have that, you have some kind of hope. And that's why I think the ingredients or the cards in the deck, in your deck personally, are very important. Because if you have 51 good cards and one rotten apple, you can be dealing out great hands day after day, and then suddenly, you know, something really gets you and it sets you back for years or for the rest of your life. And I think selecting, knowing that you can make your own deck, you know, is really important. Like your the kind of work that you do is very important. The kind of things that you do in exchange for money are very important. The people that you select for your family, whatever that means, if that's like a group of friends in a hobo train or if that's a wife and children, is irrelevant. What you select as your family when you hopefully leave your original family, as we all should, those are the cards in the deck. You know, I think that's really important because you never know what you're going to get. But if the ingredients are good, you're going to get something good almost all of the time. That's what I have found.
I mean, it's so funny because like I'm hearing this and right away my mind goes to I don't know whether you've always been like obviously you can operate at a specific level of intelligence where you can hold things that might seem mutually
Mm-hmm.
exclusive or just very troubling
Mm-hmm.
at the same time as your current reality or what have you. And I feel like that's the kind of mind that can appreciate this, which is what I'm going to say as well next, is talk about a book that I had been meaning to read for a very long time that sort of talks about the antithesis of hope. And it's really interesting that you
Cool.
mentioned horror in the same sentence. I read The Conspiracy Against the
Okay.
Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. Have you, as a way of introduction to it, have you ever watched True Detective season one specifically?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to what the book is then. Thomas Ligotti, great horror writer, sort of like Lovecraft minus the racism plus Stephen King,
Yeah.
but a little bit more grounded. It's cosmic, it's utterly bleak,
Yeah.
extraordinarily grim, thoroughly. It treats the biggest part of horror is that it occasionally reveals it pulls back the mask of this of what we consider reality occasionally and just at the corner of it and underneath it there's this little picture that you can sort of poke your eye through and there's us but we see the strings that are attached from us from our shoulders and hands to this great unknowable abyss.
Mhm.
Spooky. Whoa. He wrote one nonfiction book in his life. That book was The
Yeah.
Conspiracy Against the Human Race. And in this book, which is, it reads like an academic, critical, or philosophical theory book, like literally an academics, like it's got citations and footnotes and
Yeah.
refers to other academics in that field. It's incredibly well researched and very well written. But what's so scary about it is that reading it, it's basically one big thesis on, hey, isn't human consciousness a blunder? Aren't you so miffed about being given this horrible mutation that you have to live with every day? And with the best thing that we can do as a species is go as one into extinction together, arms linked. And it's like, hey, man, fuck,
Yeah.
stop that. That's not.
Yeah.
But you know what's
What did
really
you
weird?
take from it, from
I feel
that?
like you can appreciate this.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, honestly, I felt like you know when you would go to some party that you didn't want to go to, and like as a kid, and an adult would like strike up a conversation with you and
Yeah.
actually talk to you like an adult. It felt like that. It honestly felt like a person that was able to say, "Yeah, this is absolutely it's not just absurd. It's not just it's truly nihilistic in the most practical way and in such a considered way." And it's like, yeah, and I'm fine with that. It's like it's incredible. So what I find amazing about that though
Mhm.
is that you talked about hope. And for someone who like myself, who I go past the points of cynicism and pessimism into like
Yeah.
philosophically I mean like really like
Totally.
Schopenhauer and
Totally.
like really like forget Nietzsche. Like that dude was like, nah, forget that. That's like Nabokov and Tolstoy and all those fellas. They all stopped short of going into the abyss. And that is the stuff where you have a rather closed network of people that are like really into the true conclusion, the grand conclusion, which is like, yeah, just humans suck and we shouldn't, this consciousness thing sucks and we shouldn't have this. This is awful. And it's like, so then what? And it's like, yeah, that's the point. But then what my so what is that I then live out of spite. It's maybe sublimation, maybe it's whatever, because he points out the four things how we deal with this. Like, so the first thing is Epicureanism, like life is about like just making of it what you can, except that nothing makes sense. And then he has a couple others, which of course I'm forgetting because I'm realizing I'm talking so long and I need to shut up right now. I guess all of that is to say, okay, I, however, have never actually been on the receiving end of mortality being withdrawn from me. I've seen
Yeah.
death, I've stared it in the face, but that's not the same as me
No, they're
at
different.
the risk of
Yeah,
the
they're
cutting
different.
of my thread, right?
I have-
You have, however. And I wonder if you can share some insight into whether that maybe helps with respect to looking at hope in the face of like true nihilism.
Yes. Yes, I can. Um, it's nice to be kids that are grown up, like if you're driving in the car and you say to your parents when you're young, "Can we do this?" And they go, "No, not now." But now that we're kids, but in these large bodies, you say, "Can you talk about this?" And I can go, "Yes, yes, we can." It's so fun to be grown up and get revenge on all the adults that you, and I mean adults of the past and the adults of the
Now it's my
present.
turn.
Uh, so
Right.
I find nihilism really boring, and I find it passe too. I find it like I find it like someone who's trying to have taste in art, but they have no idea the basis for discerning whether something is good or not. And these subjects have been tackled for a really, I'll get to the me part, but I'm really interested in what you're saying. The subjects have been tackled for a long time about, hey, basically you could sum all that up with, hey, I didn't ask to be born. What the fuck? Yeah, me too. Every single person that's been born did not ask to be born. And so the thing is, when people start suggesting how it could be better, you're automatically taking over the role of God or a universal in chargeness. And I think wisdom, great wisdom, is found in knowing that you can hardly know anything, but one thing you can know for sure is none of this is your design and you are not in charge of it. But when people start to talk about what we should do about this unasked for presence, I find they're just assuming the role of a god. And I'm like, man, like that's boring. That's people trying to lead cults and start religions and be presidents and all this stuff for millennia. Like it's to me, it's nothing new. I'm like, yeah, I know. I,
Hmm.
I also didn't ask to be born. Like I get it. I get it. Blah blah blah. Um, it's interesting if you take a look at because you're such a reader and a writer yourself. If you take a look at Cormac McCarthy, for anyone who's listening, he wrote No Country for
Yep.
Old Men. He wrote The Road, Blood Meridian, and of course these two novels recently published just after his passing. You want to talk about bleak, you know, and especially the like all of them, but especially The Road. A man and a boy.
That's
It's
the
it's,
one I
it's
haven't
okay
read.
for the
Damn it.
listener.
Of
It's
course. I
simple.
mean, it's so
Un,
funny. Yeah, from what
un,
I hear, it's incredible. Blood Meridian
yeah,
and No Country for
in
Old
The
Men.
Road,
Oh, but
unnamed cataclysm has killed just about everybody, and the earth is dead. There's nothing left to eat, and the very few remaining people are just wandering an ever darkening, ever getting colder earth. And almost everyone has resorted to a blood cult, where basically their goal is to just eat all the remaining humans and make a sort of a culture out of it. Because that's what we do with culture. We like, what do we have on our hands? Okay, let's make a culture out of it. Trees, people, whatever. And but this man and this boy, they refuse to
right.
eat people, and they're trying to go south, hoping that it's warmer somewhere. You get the feeling it's probably not going to be. but they try anyway. And the man protects the boy no matter what, and they don't resort to nihilism in order to temporarily solve their problems. And Cormac McCarthy is like exploring all these things you're saying to the nth degree. And it moved me very much that his conclusion, if you take it from that book, is to die trying. Um, I'm not looking to, yeah, I'm not looking to
Ooh.
succeed. Speaking of myself, I'm looking to die trying. I think that's kind of like the whole point. Because if we're not gods, there's no resolution coming because we are subjects of something that is beyond our control. You know what I mean?
I do. That is potent. I mean, my takeaway was like living in spite, and that's of course
No, but
that's
I'm
where
into.
I'm
I want. Can
I
you
go
talk about
with
that
it.
for a sec? I want to know
Uh,
what you mean, man. What that's like.
I want to talk about you at some
Okay.
point, but I will diverge just for a second because this is fascinating. And I'm so glad that this is where we ended up. Like, forget talking about like Instagram algorithms. Let's talk about like
Yeah.
the nature of why we're even fucking here. Um, and like that's the thing about make break is I want the Instagram talk or the meta talk or whatever, but I also want like, hey, occasionally you're gonna wonder why the fuck are you doing this? You need to have your why. Okay, my why is a little bit like I imagine a rat,
Yeah.
like vermin, a rodent. And what's really weird about the rat is that it is such an intelligent, such a well-tuned creature. It is the hallmark, a highlight,
Yeah.
really, if you look at it objectively, as like one of the most fascinating products of an earth that did absolutely everything to hone and
Mhm.
sharpen its skill, its wit,
Yeah.
its survival, you know? Much like the
I
cockroach, it
don't.
just
I don't think it's a
endures no
mistake that
matter
Stephen
what.
King's Night Shift collection essentially starts with Graveyard Shift with rats. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Right. So what's fascinating as well is that we attribute so much horror to rats and vermin and rodents. I don't know if you remember the movie Ben from back in the day. It was about these experimental rats that go on a bit of a
Yeah.
rampage. This is like the 80s type stuff. There's also Secret of Nim, like these experimental rats that sort of like unlock that level of like, almost like a semi magical level of insight and intelligence. But it's like that figure of the rat, this rodent, this vermin, if I transpose my newfound disdain for humanity and its
Yeah.
consciousness onto the rat, I kind of feel like that's what the world that is so unknowable kind of must regard humanity as, or at least this earth that we do so much
Mhm.
anthropomorphizing
Yes.
of, like this Mother Earth
Yeah.
type thing, which is so
So
funny
true.
because Mother Earth, Mother
Yeah.
Gaia, with all her, lilac dreads and her great green knowingness, has killed 99.99999% of all
Yeah.
species on the face of its planet,
Yeah.
like that have ever lived. Like that's not even, and I actually have to add more decimals to that because that's how many things have been brought to
So
life
the
and
living
go
in spite part,
done,
how does it
gone.
come?
I am but a rat is what I'm trying to come at is, and I promise that's not like I didn't try to intentionally create some like rhyming schema. I just literally think of it as like, well, what does the rat do? Does it sit around trying to figure out like the source of it, or does it just kind of get on with it, right? And I think that there is solace. Maybe it's cold comfort for some, but for me, I really gain something from like looking at it as like whenever I'm at my most down, most like this is utterly meaningless, and I come from it from that perspective, like where I am like this is just there's no reason to any of this, and it's like, yep, and we're gonna get food, and we're gonna have sex, and we're gonna do things, and we're gonna eat sugar, and that's how we do that.
Yeah.
We have biological impulses. So be it. That's the living out of spite for me. And I know it's kind of random and weird that I picked the rat as the character for this, but like I had such a hatred for them because I lived in a house called the Bro House. It was like 364 Dupont. Back in 2007, I moved in, and by the time I moved out in 2010, it was infested with rats
Yeah.
because it was just a punk house. It was just it was so bad that the day I resolved to finally move out, I found rat
Oh,
shit in my underwear drawer. Yeah, it was, dude. This house was a nut. Like, people don't know. Like, looking at me, you're like, I don't think that you were living in a slummy kind of thing.
yep.
It was like, well, yeah,
Yep.
for a few years there, it was bad. But then that's, I think, why I
Well,
picked that particular
again,
animal.
this is now the third time in this discussion. I agree with you, but I see it a different way. No, no, I agree with you. I just don't think that I put it in the same terms. I respond to life the same way you do, pretty much, it sounds like, but I don't call it living in spite. But I essentially agree with
Right.
you. That's why I was interested. I'm like, that sounds interesting. I think that, like for me, for example, I am, when you're so convinced of something that you cease to mention it, you just are it. I am absolutely convinced that everything I
Yes.
do has meaning while I'm alive. And then when the switch goes off, it's like I never existed. So I can get into like, what should I do about this? Or I can just be it. And then when I'm gone, I'm gone.
Mm.
But I didn't just arrive at that when I was 13, over at Tim Hortons when we used to do all of our important meetings with friends at Tim Hortons's. I had to go through a lot of philosophical journey for many, many years to arrive at that conclusion that absolutely everything I do has the meaning that I assign to it. And I don't really care what anyone else thinks about it. Although I'm very interested in what the people who I choose to be in my deck of cards think about it and might contribute to it or change it. And then when I'm gone, it's just over. That's fine with me, you know? Because I don't control the overness,
Yeah, I do.
any debate that I do about it with myself is kind of a waste of time. Although, despite the fact that death is my favorite subject in all of my bands I've been in, all of my albums, everything, my writing, it's my number one favorite. But it doesn't. Oh yeah,
Even
my whole
before your
life,
near death
my
experience.
family used to make fun of me. Like I would go visit them when I was in my second band, and I'd walk in the house and they'd just go death because I was always talking
Yeah.
about it and singing about it. And I think that it's because I came to the conclusion that life is essentially being afraid of death. Life is essentially being afraid of dying all the time. And it's what you do in spite of that or how you respond to that that makes your life what it is. But that's essentially what it is. Even if you look at it biologically, we are our physical bodies are terrified of dying 24 hours a day. You alluded to that. We need to eat sugar, we need to have a crap, we need to have sex. All of that is fear of dying. Our body is just trying to keep itself
Yep.
alive desperately. Yeah.
And then, isn't it weird as well? I always think about this, like, just to go off of your point, like, we are all, I'm not trying to be an edgelord here, even though it totally sounds like it, but I swear, what's always weirded me out is that we are so close to death, like in every little thing. All you have to do is just cut off some air to a human for, what,
Mhm.
3, 5 minutes? Done. Out. So that's the scary thing, is that's why what you're saying is like there's all these biological imperatives that have been put in place by
Yeah,
our,
like rats.
millennia of of
I get
thank
it.
you. And that's what I'm saying is like you go ahead and lose sleep over the thing, but like the thing is the thing. You
Yeah,
feel me? Like,
I do. It's like this is basic Bible stories, basic ancient religion stories. Is the the pot cannot look at the potter and say, "Hey, why did you make me?" Because it's a pot. It doesn't have control. that. So just move on, you know?
Right. Yeah. Unless this is
Yeah,
Elden Ring, in which case,
totally.
it's a big pot that is able to have a fun accent. I love this because this is the type of stuff that keeps artists up at night, and this is the kind of things that give them the most angst. And I think that this is something that we don't really talk about in the music industry space, but it's also like not in the creative space in general, which I appreciate. We all hate the words influencer and creator and blah blah blah. I'm taking it back. I'm taking it back. We're gonna have creator as like a thing that we can totally have. Influencer, I don't really want that one back, but I think creator as a creative, we have these things that keep us up and they
Yeah.
haunt us, and being able to talk about it and give wording to it. Like I thought what was really cool with all the different things that I've read is like hearing someone else give words and terms to things and then talk about the next few lines of logical thought following where I'd gotten to and being like, holy shit, this is like, this person really figured it out. And it's like, no, they haven't. This is just a question we've been dealing with for a really, really long
Yeah.
time, like you said.
Can I actually give an answer to that first question, the make break? I thought of it
Yeah.
then, but I essentially exist in a state of existential crisis, which doesn't bother me. That's my natural state of being. But I have a real life answer, and I'm making myself be honest. I want to get paid. What would break everything else open is I get paid a bit. I would like to get paid more. I don't I don't need to get paid a
Correct.
lot, nor would I turn it down. It's irrelevant. I want to get paid more. That would break everything else open because money buys you the ability to have time. And unlike most people, I know what to do with my time and I know how to do it. And I've arrived at the place where I can synthesize, like your Sam Altman's little spring, uh, everything that has been my life so far and everything I've ingested from drugs to books, and I can do something with it. So I just want to get paid, Lance. And 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 I'm too much of a
That's
realist to bang away at that goal in the traditional fashion because I just turned 43, and that sentence, you can just put that as a label on me, and the help that I would like, or the not help, the business partnership that I would like within the industry, I have some, but the partnership I would like, they would like to hear 23, not 43. And I'm hardly saying I'm up against it because I'm 43, but I'm not a person who can be developed. I'm not a person at that stage. Uh, and I'm dying to make a couple of more partnerships of basically people who will treat me like the walking dollar sign with legs that I am, so that we can have this mutually beneficial relationship that benefits the people who listen to my music and read my writing, because I know it's good. It's full of life because it deals with death. And I just want some help.
This is beautiful because this is exactly the thing. It's a two pronged thing that I've been dealing with lately, which is one, I read this book by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's also the author of
Yeah.
Eat, Pray, Love, which I've
Yeah.
never read or watched the movie of. Funny enough, I know the premise. I'm well versed. It was her other book called Big Magic that I read, and it was so important to me. I've read it like three times. I first read it back in 2015, and that because of that book, it was the reason, the impetus for me, not only like finally deciding to go all in on writing, but I also wrote a manuscript that it doesn't matter. It's a manuscript. It's part of the process. I wrote it. It was like 300 and whatever pages of just like nothing. And I'm not being modest. People are like, "Oh, you're being too harsh." I'm like,
Just
I'm really
so
not. Like I mean truly, like if you read
Yeah.
I had no chops, no understanding of story. All the dialogue is I'm thinking it's cool in my
Yeah.
head, and then anyway, no discernible plot, whatever. But it's not about that. What I bring this up in response to what you just said, because in Big Magic she says the one of the big things that we have as a society, and I was just thinking about this morning, is that one of the most dangerous tropes that we have is the
Yeah.
idea of the starving artist. And I absolutely detest and do not in any way, shape, or form accept that. I don't think that Van Gogh, committing suicide was like
No,
this great, awesome thing. Fuck
agreed.
that entirely. I,
Yeah.
I hate that shit so much. Every time people are like, well, you got to be down and out to. No, you actually don't. And in fact, the most creative I've ever been was when I had my needs taken care of, when I knew what was happening next, when I knew that I was living. The most productive I have ever been as a writer was when I had a reliable 9 to 5 job at Mercedes Benz. That was when I was the most consistent. I had a great routine. Obviously, the jobs themselves, real wide diaspora,
Yeah.
like real wide spectrum of like being tolerable to wanting me to
Mm,
exit life.
same. Yeah.
Real wide slide scale there. But that's it. As I want not just this is the hardest thing is that, and this leads into the other point, which is like I've been thinking so much about what the remuneration, the compensation, the incentives are for people helping artists. And it just
Mm.
bugs me to no end. You know what I mean? Like for you, what would the most beneficial type of partnership, either traditional or new that
Yeah,
hasn't
totally.
started, be?
A manager and a publisher, and a manager to go, okay, I just spend my days monetizing you, the human being, and I go, sounds good. It like there's obviously many levels of complexity and decisions have to be made, but that's the basic arrangement. And the other one is a publisher because I'm sitting in my studio, which the designer and builder of the Hips studio helped me make, and then Jody and I did the work. My wife Jody, and yeah, man, like I just write all the time. I can't have 5 jobs. I know you have 5 jobs. I can't have. I know too much. Uh,
No, no.
Many times in
Yeah.
life, I have had too many jobs. And it doesn't really matter what the jobs are. But like when you worked at Mercedes Benz, did you work at 5 different levels of the company structure? No, you worked at one or two. 3? Okay, there.
Free. So I worked at. I got it. In fact, I actually was placed as like not an
Yeah.
intern, but like it was a work placement, and then I fought myself to full time. Like grade 9 is what they call it. Grade 1 is like you're the goddamn managing, like you know, the CEO. But grade 9 is like your bottom of the barrel entry level, and even that you have to like really fight to be
Yeah.
part of like on their payroll. And then I graduated to a grade 8, and then I got all the way up to a grade 7. I was driving a company car by the time I was leaving. Actually, no, I got
Quite
to
the
a
jump
grade
from
6. Excuse me.
say.
So it was technically 4. It took me 4.5 years, and by the time we had to go back, my wife gets a residency spot here, and she's like, "Cool, we're getting back," and I'm like, "Yeah, can't wait." March
Yeah,
2020,
good timing.
super fun.
But what I mean is though, you're asking me about that. Uh, you know, there are different, like how many people work directly for Mercedes?
Oh my god,
Lots.
yeah,
That's essentially,
count, yeah.
yeah,
Like Daimler itself,
that's
yeah,
essentially my
tens of thousands of
point.
people.
No matter how many tasks one employee does, they're one of 10,000 people that make it run. Whatever the size of the operation is, uh, unless you are one of a very small handful of people, I don't think people should be doing all these different jobs at the same time because none of them get done with
Mm,
commitment. The quality is debatable because consuming habits are just as fucked up as the creators are. So they like hardly notice half the time when something is shit. But If everybody
Hmm.
was able to more focus on one or two things, not everything's perfect, but like even just three, but not seven, you know? And that's why I'm willing to
Hmm.
do like three or four things, but not 10. I know too much. I've lived like that most of my life, and I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that anymore.
That's interesting to note. So, like, I think that with the advent of LLMs and AI, everyone's kind of starting to realize that, like, everyone can be a bit of a generalist and, like, they can have
Yeah,
a certain level of baseline, and that you're actually seeing that already and saying that the logical conclusion, which is the next step, which is like, no, the people that will be most effective or interesting are the
right.
people that are
And
hyper niched.
the that what you're saying and what I'm saying is a part of what's causing this gigantic homogenization of a worldwide culture. Culture is being homogenized. When you go through the Spotify top 50, there might be some good songs in there or even great ones, but you can barely tell the difference between most of the songs from one song to another because our culture is homogenized because people are not specializing in just doing one thing. And it would I don't want to get this off track because so much of being a musician these days seems to be bitching about things. Spotify, the sound of things, blah blah blah. I don't want to do
There's a lot to
there,
bitch about,
there can
to be
be,
fair.
but no, I think that yeah, working with to bring it back to what you asked, working with a manager who just treats me like a dollar sign on legs, and I mean that in a good way, and a publisher who treats the
Okay.
audible material like a dollar sign that goes in people's ears. Those are the two partnerships I want. I have no interest in a record label or anything of that nature.
I know what the answer is, but I'll ask so that anyone who's listening to it, I mean, tomorrow, next day, whatever, can know what's your experience been like with a record
Well,
label, Kentucky.
they did a good job of putting the records in the record store shelf because at that time there were still it was before Spotify was existed actually, and long before it was allowed to happen in Canada and the United States, before the major labels finally gave up and gave in. Um, so yeah, they did a good job of getting the CDs on the shelf, but I did everything else. You know, I hired a radio tracker. I got us to number one in whatever cities we were number one in on the rock stations. I booked the tour. I got the partners. Uh, and now uh, a lot of that is like my fault or my problem. If the label saw me as a bigger dollar sign, they would have wanted to control all that stuff to make sure they get their dollar signs. So I'm not saying it doesn't have to do with me, but
Right.
labels are smart. They can, or that they used to be. They control distribution. Just because that's the
Mm.
one place where someone buys something and then someone pays for it, but you never touch the consumer. And now that distribution is totally gone as we used to
Mm.
know it, I just don't see the point in having a record label. What's the point? Now, sorry, in
Yeah,
a
I think
tradition in a
I always.
traditional sense
Oh,
of a
go ahead.
record label. A record label now should mean your manager, your publisher, a person who works on sync and licensing, and a booking agent. So there's totally a point for a record label if it's like that.
Right. That's the difference, right? Is like, but they also used to do so much
Mm.
more artist development. I mean, they used to get so much more involved. Maybe not a good thing in
But
many cases, maybe not a good
sometimes
thing,
development.
but
Like
sometimes, yeah,
Guns N' Roses
100%.
spent
Like,
2 or 3 years with Interscope or whoever it was, paying for their life, paying for their house, paying for this. They worked on Appetite for Destruction forever because they couldn't get it good. And then when they
whoa.
finally got it good, then they put it out. You know, artist development, there's a lot to be said for it.
Can
No,
you imagine that in this day and age? Paying for 2 years for just a band to just like live. And I'm sure that they were not exactly
no, I
good
think
boys. I
the
mean,
the
it's
Mr.
Guns N'
Brownstone
Roses,
budget was
so.
pretty high.
Yeah. Jeez. I mean, nowadays, like I've been seeing like a lot of label activity over the past few years has just been
Yeah.
like TikTok chasing where they're like, "Oh my God, wait, this person went viral. Okay, now let's approach them." And it's like, "You sons of bitches. Like you don't want to help them develop an audience whatsoever. You don't want to help them with socials. You don't want to help them with any of that stuff. You just put it all on them and they go, "You figure it out, stupid." And it's like if you guys were so I think of labels as investment bankers and with just as much taste and discernment. I don't have a very great opinion of labels in general. Maybe this is why they don't want to
Oh,
work with me, but I'm kidding. They want to work with Chris, not me. No, I am genuinely joking about that. What I am not joking about though is that that has been the model, right? They give you a fat advance
yeah.
or whatever advance, whatever seems fat to that person, right? And then they go, great, this is the amount of return that we
Yeah.
demand on that stack. And then also, by the way, so that you're distracted by the advance, there's also this percentage that is pretty much everything. Like, and then they created 360 deals where, you know, if they where they do see the artist as a dollar sign on legs, but it's like in everything that there's no exit. So it's they want doors. If they you sell a bottle of
Mhm.
water at your merch table,
I
they
do.
want that. You know
I
what I mean?
think
Like they want it
what would
all.
benefit everybody is if everybody in music from the on all sides of the industry, including the artists but not limited to, if everybody got together and said to themselves the truth, which is that rock and roll, which includes, because it eventually gave birth to hip hop, rap, modern country music, all that stuff. That was a one-time explosion that happened from like 1958 to debatable endpoint. I think of it in my terms as when the Killers put out their first album, but it could be slightly later than that or slightly before that. That was a one-time unrepeatable event. Like the Renaissance in Europe happened once. There has not been a second Renaissance. It's an offshoot and an outgrowth of that time. Uh, when we got a toaster, when people got toasters, everyone was like, "Oh my God, have you seen this thing? This toasts the bread. This is amazing." And it was a phenomenon. You know, you can think of this same thing about a microwave. After time passes, everyone gets used to the toaster. And everyone still has a toaster and they still like the toaster, but the toaster no longer is a phenomenon. And I think that that's the truth of what has happened to music is that it is now the toaster and we still need it, we still love it, but it's no longer this one time incandescent explosion that literally changed people's lives. And if everybody got together and agreed with me, I think it would benefit the music industry, it would benefit artists, and most importantly, because I'm an old believer in the power of music, it would benefit the listeners, which is whom we should all be doing this for. If we all got together and, as I'm saying half jokingly but half seriously, and agreed with what I'm saying, um, music would become more special again. It's not like it's disappeared, but it has lost a lot of luster. I think it would be a good idea for us to admit where things are at because then it would create more possibilities of where we could go from here instead of chasing things.
This is fascinating. So like I guess instead of just asking why that is, I'll ask a much more pertinent, like a much more I'll try to ask a much more incisive like follow up to that because that is are you saying that having the level of novelty because essentially that's what you're because there was a lot of invention, there
Yes.
was a lot of innovation, there was a lot of
Hearing
well, not just a lot of
never
like
heard
that would
before.
be like saying right,
Now we
literally, quite
all
literally.
have those things. We know what Led Zeppelin sounds like. When Led Zeppelin came out, it had never been heard before, those sounds. It's like, what are they doing? What is that?
Right.
It made you yeah, it
What
made you
is this?
physically
What is this?
excited and it affected your life choices, but not like one time, like frequently. Do you remember we used to argue and say, "You like
Yeah.
that band? I can't even talk to you."
Literally that happens quite lit. I am a 37-year-old man and I
Yep.
still occasionally get that impulse to be like, "You listen to
Used to
them?
break up
What?"
used to break up relationships.
No.
Not more.
Yeah, it used to like, dude, it was just like a goddamn football club or something. And that and rightfully so in a way because what you're saying back then and still is today, and that's the
Yep.
thing is I don't want to get too into like this dynamic that I think we can sometimes shift into, which is that it's like there's nothing new or
No,
exciting coming out. That's
no.
not what you're saying. That's not. However, has it been done
Yes.
before? Quite literally, yes, because there's a finite number of chords, there's a finite number of notes, there's a finite number, and so there is with like thing. But just like we were talking about, bringing it back from the beginning, it's all about the framework. We've reached the critical mass of frameworks. The only thing that's innovative now is just combining subgenres in
Yeah, and even
unexpected
that is
ways.
tough. Like, what hasn't been
Like
tried, you know?
that's what I'm saying though is that like so when you combine, it's like, hey, I'm taking like a
Mhm.
reggaeton approach
Yeah.
to gent, and it's like, what the fuck, what, or you're taking like, hyper pop with, black metal, and it's like, what are you like, why would you do that? Like
Yep.
these are just rolls of the dice in terms of like there's only a certain number of combinations, maybe there's a lot of combinations, but that's the thing that's left is like just the
Yeah, and
variations.
I don't know what needs to come next, but I can feel it, something. And classical music is a proof of my concept. Classical music, in the form that we think of it, was a one-time explosion that lasted longer than rock and roll. But since then, people still go to see classical music to a degree, but it's got a cap. They're not the audience isn't growing, and that's okay. You know, jazz was an explosion, but it has reached its
Hmm.
thing. And yeah, numbers this year, after COVID, people started listening to jazz more because they wanted to express their emotions and chill the fuck out. But my point is, the most successful jazz label, Blue Note, they're not trying to grow their audience year over year. They're trying to do good work in the genre they do it in and make sure they get it to the people who appreciate it. And I think there's something contained in that. You know, like let's say the people who like the genre of music I make, that's cool. I would like to just find them and serve them, and that we would all benefit from that approach and have a more realistic uh, outlook, I guess.
I think this ties into a number of different facets that we can't get away from, which is time, which obviously all of our time is getting gobbled up. All of it. It's just getting eaten up. Because, like, even this right here, right now, I'm doing this as part of my. I don't, everybody has an ulterior motive and has to now because they need to serve themselves financially
Mhm.
as well as creatively. So nothing can just exist as like just a chat between friends. It how now has to be like this serviceable, marketable moment that is then distributed, and then you cut up for social media, and then you use and repurpose into other things. It's like we're just dog fooding everything into this
Yeah.
flywheel of content, and we're doing that with like our lives. We're doing that with like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to listen to this podcast or listen to this album because I won't get the time to just do
Yeah.
it down and do that separately. I won't get the time to I want to fit more things in, and because I have to, because I don't work an 8-hour job anymore, because I have the gig economy where I'm just constantly feeling the call of driving or delivering or working these random things to make ends meet. And I think that the ability to sit down and enjoy music, or to attend shows, by the way, that's a whole other ball game. Oh my god. Like, because then, yeah, I think there's so
I,
many
I feel the same way,
there's so
Lance.
many
It's like I
prongs.
have to stop myself from thinking about it because there's so much to it.
Yeah, it's a very big question of like, how do we where do we go from here? I mean, I'm real negative Nancy, so I tend to think look at the headlines of like, and I see the things that are happening, such as like Spotify paying nobody anything, its own execs doing very questionable, messed up stuff, and then also like the advent of AI. I don't even want to call it music because I feel like it's a legitimization.
Stuff.
AI sound curation. Yes, like it would be like calling AI video like like movies. It's like it's not. It's
Yeah.
like AI screensavers. You know, it's like AI art. Nah, it's AI visuals. Let's just call it. Let's degrade it because that's what it is. It's an autocomplete that is just extremely complicated. That's all. That's all it is. That's all it is, and it's a
Yeah.
regression to the mean. That's the problem. Is all of that Spotify top 50 to me, pop music. The reason why I've historically been so anti-pop, and I think you may or may not have been yourself, is because it always felt like it was just people being sycophants for currying favor with the
Yeah.
masses, trying their best to get a hit, and by doing that, they just crafting the thing that agrees with so
Yeah.
many people. And it's like
Yep.
it's
Well,
boring.
there's music and then there's entertainment. And I think there's room for both. And I think it's good to know what you're doing and or it's good to know what you're consuming, music or entertainment, and both are fine.
I guess the other part of this is like the culture part. I came from hardcore, so hardcore is very much like a
Yes.
very insular community. It's not something that you can just waltz into. I've seen that happen, and I've seen how poorly it ended for that person because they conducted themselves in a manner that is
Yep.
not conducive to hardcore. So what happens with that space is if I apply that same mindset of if you take the same tribal, insular, tight knit community aspect of things to certain acts and certain communities that are fostered and maintained, or I guess, or given life by certain artists or bands, maybe that's the next thing. I mean, that's what all the marketers would have you believe is that it's all down to like some community, some fan club. That's the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can only participate in so many things, you know? You can only participate in so many things. I just wish I
It's
didn't have to
true.
sleep.
It's true.
I just wish I didn't. I wish sleep was not
Yeah.
necessary. I would never stop.
Same.
You know what I mean? There's just no,
I love that because that's exactly how I felt. Oh my
yeah.
god.
You know,
Yes.
it's just it's uncomfortable. Just on this topic we're talking about. Anytime something is changing so much that you don't really know what's going on, like truly, it's just uncomfortable. And I think everyone in the music business, from people who are currently succeeding to not, and I mean like managers, publishers, artists, PR, everybody, it's just uncomfortable because everybody really knows they don't know where they're going. And nobody knows where this whole thing is going. And I think people who are smart, they try not to ask themselves the question too much. People who are not smart, like me, tend to think about it too much. But it's just uncomfortable, right? Like stress comes from uh, basically three things, and one of them is the unknown. It's inherently stressful for human beings, the unknown, and so it's like I get it, you know. If you told me like, well, how do you want it to be then, Holman? I'd be like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I really don't know. I don't know. And like you said, I'm inherently selfish. I just want to have uh, enough money to keep writing until I die. That's it. And then what happens along the way is the adventure.
If that's selfish, right. And there's something that I
Yeah.
sorry, I have to share this one because it's so silly, but I'm starting to really think that maybe I'm onto something here. But I was watching Heat by Michael Mann,
Yeah.
1995 classic film, You know, uh, and there's a moment in that film where this, I swear this relates to what you're saying, where the discovery and the process of itself is that in itself a destination of sorts. My version of that, again, it's all down to like what flavors you and I enjoy. But for me, there's a moment in the film where they have to ask themselves, like, are we going to do this even though we know that the heat have come? And Tom Sizemore is like, it's time for him to shit or get off the pot. And he's like, what should I do? And De Niro's like, no, no, on this one, you're on your own. And Sizemore's like, thinks about it for a minute. And then he's like, well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in. The action
Totally.
is the juice.
Yeah, I'm same,
Love
same.
it.
I see it the same way.
I think if you could just give us one last parting piece of wisdom, because we have had like no shortage of insight and also like under like willingness and ability to like really sit with like big themes, but like in a very practical sense, like I know what your pain points are and they're not unique per se, but it I have enjoyed the unique take on it. What do you think what do you think people what would you like to break in terms of how that will allow you to make things going
Yeah.
forward? Notice that I did that little silly little book ending of what do you
Like
make to break? What do
break
you break to
meaning
make?
to
You know,
succeed.
so anyway, that's an interesting thing. I wanted to leave that ambiguous so that it allows you more options. So if you heard
So
that,
what
great,
would
you
I
go for
like
it.
to break in order to make?
Or keep making.
You know, uh, I would just like someone to help me out with everything other than the writing and the recording and the performing. I will just make an honest, practical admission. I was with my family. We were on tour in April. I was at Wolf Island out in the middle of Lake Ontario playing at this amazing venue. And we went
Mm.
out for dinner. And I asked everybody, we had two of our three kids with us and my wife, and I said, what are you each confused about? And our daughters had these amazing answers about just what didn't make sense to them. They're 13 and 15. It was just like, oh man, from the voice of a child becomes great, great things. We then learned that my wife is not confused about anything and never has been, which shocked us all. She, uh, her drama in the drama that we all have in life is in uh, acting upon what she is certain about, but she's not finds herself never confused about how she sees things or why she thinks things happen. And it got to me, and obviously I'm asking for a reason. And I almost cried. I said, to be honest, I'm so confused because I am totally clear that what I write and record and perform has meaning and value. And I hear a very loud voice 24 hours a day telling me to do it and only it. And I can't understand why I don't have more just help in getting it out there and or connecting with people. And it confuses me deeply every day. And that is what I would like to break is to break my confusion about why I am totally clear about the voices in my head, and yet um, I'm still struggling to put together the finances to do it. There you go.
Oh, god damn. Thank you for sharing that. I think that any response that
Oh
I
man,
could come up
I
with for
hate
that
being
is going to
honest.
be
I just have
like
an
just
agreement with
uh,
myself that I have to try to be. Hate honesty. Yep.
die trying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Die trying.
Cool, man.
That
Thank you.
I'm
That's
taking
I
that with.
enjoyed talking to you.
I've enjoyed talking with you, and I, you know, now I'm going to
Oh
like
yeah.
bug you for another one at some point. Yeah, I don't give a shit. I'll speak to whoever I want whenever I want. I don't even have this as a cadence, dude. I just put this shit out when I want. Enough of this, like, every Tuesday. Nope, not committing to that at all. You
We
get
are
what you
grown-up
get, and you
children.
don't
We
get
do what we
upset.
want.
Okay.
Revenge.
Thank
Revenge.
you. Exactly. Stop. Correct. Stop putting so much goddamn pressure on it. No, I really, really appreciated talking to you, and God, you got me a lot of things to think about now. I mean, not that I didn't have any shortage before, but very specific
Cool.
things
You
to
too.
ruminate
Thank you.
on. Let's try and like fix it all together. What do you think? Let's just all fix the entire
I
industry.
say that to when my wife and I have like a very philosophical debate about something tangible. When we come to that end of it, I always say, "Well, we've solved all the problems, and yet accomplished nothing." Yeah,
Great. Well, yeah. And yet accomplish nothing's great. God damn. All right. Well, thank you yet again. And
appreciate it,
yeah,
Lance. Enjoyed it.
thank you for